All right, great. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the August 25th, 2026 Municipal Financial Recovery Advisory Committee meeting. I am Vijay Kapoor, honor of serving as the receiver for the City of Chester. Joined here today with me is the committee, Mayor Stefan Roots from the City of Chester, the Honorable Shaquan Davis, council member for the City of Chester, Mr. Andrew Sheaf from DCED, Brad Kwan from PFM, who is my special assistant, and Cody Deal from DCED, who is my executive assistant. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
All right, as summer's coming to an end, we know we got school starting next week, right? August 31st, I think, for most of the schools down this end. Today, what I have for everybody is a report from the CWA board meeting that both the mayor and I attended last week. Before we get to that, I just wanted to confirm with Cody that we did not receive any public comment. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Receiver. No public comments received. So, as always, would just like to remind the public they can reach out to this committee, and we would like them to do so if they have anything they'd like to share. Best way to do so is still our resource account email address, which is info@chesterreceivership.com, and also through the Chester Receivership website, there is an outreach button as well.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Cody. And also joining us is Ms. Kelly Diaz. Hey, Kelly, how are you?
Hello, good afternoon.
All right, great. So before we get into this report, does anybody have anything they wanted to just start with? Any announcements any folks wanted to make? Councilman Davis, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the Public Works building at the end of the meeting, but just uh, wanted to extend the opportunity if anyone else wanted to say anything before we get started with the presentation. All right, let us go ahead and do that. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And I'll ask everybody if you can, somebody give me a thumbs up that you can see the presentation. Kelly, you're nodding, right? So we can
Yeah.
see it. All right, awesome. Thank you. So what I have for you today is a presentation of a report from the Chester Water Authority board meeting last week that both Mayor Roots and I attended. We want to do a couple of things with this report and this update for the public. One is we want to update you on several items from that meeting, including the CWA board preliminarily authorizing borrowing up to $100 million to refinance debt. The second thing we wanted to do is we wanted to update the public on one CWA board member's request for more detailed financial information. We need, again, unfortunately, to set the record straight that the receiver's office has never been in favor of privatizing the CWA based on some comments at that meeting. And we also wanted to update you all on the receiver's right to know request seeking financial information from the CWA. Now, you all may have remembered from last time we had video and I was able to show what happened over here at the meeting. Unfortunately, while I'd like to do that here, I can't because the Chester Water Authority doesn't live stream its meetings and it has not yet posted the recording of the meeting to its YouTube page. So I want to just take a step back and answer a question that some of you may have, and that's why am I even making these reports? I want to start with the first point over here, which I think is really important, particularly in light of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision in January. So I want to talk about the rights that the city has, the statutory rights that the city has. So in addition to appointing a third of the Chester Water Authority's board, the city of Chester has court-recognized statutory rights, along with Delaware County and along with Chester counties, over the CWA, and so it has an interest in how CWA is being run and how it is spending its ratepayer dollars. Now, the second reason I'm doing this is despite the claim that it supports government transparency, the CWA board does not conduct its meetings in a way that the general public can meaningfully understand the actions that it's taken. And because the press doesn't usually attend these meetings, which it's difficult to do, right? They're at 2 o'clock on the third Thursday of the month, and they're not live streamed. The public isn't going to know what happened unless someone else tells them. And in light of, again, a couple of the actions that were taken at the last board meeting, it is important, I think, for the public to know. And then third is fundamentally, I believe in government transparency. You all know that here. I know the city of Chester believes in it. It is one of the first things that the receiver did was improve that transparency in the city of Chester, and we believe fundamentally that is a good thing and another reason why we are we're talking about it. So again, I want to start first with a couple of the important action items on the CWA's board's agenda. We've got three of them that I've selected over here that I think are particularly important, right? And the first one is a huge one, right? This was the preliminary authorization to borrow up to $100 million in debt to refinance already existing debt. So on the CWA agenda, which by the way was posted just 24 hours prior to the actual meeting, what the CWA staff was seeking from the board was preliminary authorization to allow the appropriate authority officials to take all the necessary actions to ratify all actions taken to date and to effect the refinancing of the 2014 and 2025 bonds by issuing 2026 CWA bonds in an amount not to exceed $100 million and to approve the attached move forward resolution. That's a pretty big thing, right? Anytime an entity borrows money, particularly money in that has 9 digits in it, that's a pretty big step. As the mayor knows, and as I noted there as well, that move forward resolution was not attached to the agenda available to the public. So while the board passed that resolution, we don't know what was actually in it. And of course, I didn't make a right to know request at the end of last week to do that. But that's again a kind of a pretty important resolution that, generally speaking, when you deal with borrowing money, especially when you're looking to borrow 9 figures worth of money, you generally show that resolution to the public, even when you're just looking for a preliminary authorization to move forward on that. So that was the first thing. The second action item that shows up in a lot of the CWA board meetings is a request to approve the expenses by function. And so this action by the CWA board ratifies expenses made by the CWA. But again, in this case, the public does not know how large the expenses were because the board didn't attach the report to the agenda for the public. So we don't know which entities were paid because the report combines the spending into high-level functions rather than by entity. And as you all know, if you watched the last MFRAC, this was the subject of the request by the CWA board member Thomas Moore, who was appointed by the city, at the July 16th, 2026 CWA board meeting for more detailed information. Again, we're gonna talk a little bit more about his request in a little bit. And then the third important action item that I want to call out here was a request to approve a revised CWA purchasing policy. And again, like everything else, sound like a broken record here, but that purchasing policy was not attached to the agenda available to the public. And a purchasing policy is important, right? It's what directs staff how they can spend ratepayer dollars. So a question that all of us may have here is what did the purchasing policy change? Again, we don't know because the policy was not provided and because the board did not comment on what that change was. So I want to talk a little bit about trying to get information from the CWA, right? And again, why I keep harping on this, because I've sort of found myself in a little bit of a trap, right? And I think any member of the public who's seeking information from the CWA is going to find themselves in the same spot. And again, this reminds me of back when we first got to Chester and the difficulty that we and I think members of the public also had when they were trying to get information from the city. So here, the way the CWA's processes and current procedures work, a member of the public is never going to get background information on a board agenda item prior to the CWA board acting on it, unless CWA decides to put that information out itself. And here's why. This is the process that occurs, right? And let me just say, this is all legal, by the way. I'm not saying anything is illegal over here, but this is how you can use the process, right, to actually block the public from getting information before you act on it. So because the CWA doesn't provide background information on agenda items, like Delaware County does, like the city of Chester does, like Chester County does, like most municipalities do, a member of the public has to make a right to know request. But the CWA posts its agenda only 24 hours before the meeting. So that means the earliest that a member of the public can make a right to know request is 24 hours before the meeting, because you're probably not going to know what the agenda items are until they post the agenda 24 hours in advance. But because the right to know law allows 5 days to reply and then allows another 30 days if the government requests it, a member of the public is never going to get that background information before the board acts on it. Even if that background information is a resolution authorizing a borrowing of up to $100 million, right? Because you put the agenda item out, you put the agenda out 24 hours in advance. The person makes the right to know request. Let's say they make it 10 minutes after that. They've got 5 days, but remember the board is meeting the next day to take action on it, right? So you'll get it, but you'll get it after the CWA board actually takes action on it, right? Which is crazy, right? And which doesn't really feel very transparent. Maybe legal, but does not seem to seems to sort of violate the spirit of transparency. And that spirit of transparency was something that I mentioned at the last meeting, that the CWA board chair, Noel Brandon, penned an op-ed that was posted in the Spirit back on July 29th. And the words he used, which I think were which I agreed with, right? He said, ultimately, transparency is not measured by what is said, it is measured by what is done. Financial accountability, responsible stewardship, independent oversight, results that people can see and trust. Those are the foundations of good governance, and they remain the standard the public should expect from every institution entrusted with serving it. But how do you square that quote with CWA's obsessive control of basic financial information? How do you square that quote, right, with kind of what we're seeing over here? How do you square that quote with, if any of you saw the last MFRAC, with a board member asking for more detailed financial information and then having the solicitor call that request performative, and suggesting that even that board member may need to file a right to know request? Like it just doesn't jive, right? And so, again, I'm gonna take Chairman Brandon at his word that he believes in it, in transparency, but the actions of the board don't really seem to back those words up. So let's talk about the board member request for financial information, right? And just to recap for those of you who may not have seen this, back on the July 11th, 2026 CWA board meeting, board member Thomas Moore, the CWA solicitor Frank Catania, and two other board members had an exchange after Mr. Moore asked for more detailed financial information on the $4.8 million in items in the expense by function report in order, what Mr. Moore said, was to fulfill his fiduciary responsibilities. And as many of you know from following these MFRACs, the CWA board is spending thousands of ratepayer dollars trying to remove Mr. Moore from his position on the CWA, despite being unanimously appointed by Chester City Council. Mayor voted for Mr. Moore, and Councilman Davis also voted for Mr. Moore. So during that exchange, despite two other CWA board members indicating that a board member could just simply request additional information, Solicitor Catania called Mr. Moore's request, quote, performative, and seemed to suggest that Mr. Moore, who was a board member, by the way, would need to file a right to know request for this information, despite Mr. Moore being a board member. Now, he also said that the Solicitor Catania said that he would respond in writing to Mr. Moore. There was a little bit of that odd exchange at the end where the solicitor talked about he would respond to writing to ask about what Mr. Moore was seeking, even though it was on video. So I took you all through that exchange at the August 11th, 2026 MFRAC meeting. We had video. I kind of broke it down frame by frame. You can see that on our YouTube page. Once we post this, you can also click that link, and that will also take you to the MFRAC. So at the August 20th meeting, at the most recent meeting, Mr. Moore said that he did not receive the additional information that he requested, and that the only written response he received was an email from Solicitor Catania asking him if he had time to meet with him and the solicitor. So Mr. Moore again asked for information in the form of a check registry. So what a check registry is basically a list of payments. That tells you who got paid and how much. Very basic thing. It's any reporting system, if you just press a button, we'll be able to spit that out. It's probably actually takes more work to create the expenses by function report than it would to create a check registry. That's just the fact of the matter. And again, that information was not provided to Mr. Moore. So to kind of take a step back and just summarize, like kind of like where we are right now on this, we have the Chester Water Authority Board seeking to borrow up to $100 million, right? Tenth of $1 billion in order to refinance debt, but it does not post the resolution doing so. Its procedures are such that a member of the public will never obtain background information, resolutions that they're voting on a CWA board agenda item before the board acts on it. And then you've got a CWA board member who has requested additional basic financial information to fulfill his fiduciary responsibilities and independent oversight and is not being provided that information. And on top of all that, right, the CWA board is spending thousands of ratepayer dollars trying to remove that same board member who is trying to exercise his independent oversight and his fiduciary responsibilities, trying to remove him from the board. That's the facts of what we're seeing right now at the Water Authority. And again, if you go back to the op-ed that Chairman Brandon wrote in the Spirit, doesn't really jibe with the spirit of transparency. So let's talk a little bit about some of the comments at the board meeting and us having to set the record straight again. So couple of first comments over there, and again, the mayor joined me here as well. At the beginning, I commented on the fact that CWA did not provide background information on the resolution to preliminarily authorize a borrowing of $100 million. Didn't have any impact, passed it anyway. Mayor Roots attended the meeting, spoke against the CWA board's continued litigation, seeking to remove the city's unanimously appointed board member, Thomas Moore, one of the 3 board members. And I spoke about the burdensome right to know requests that the CWA had filed with the city of Chester, my office, and DCED. But usually there's not a lot. Usually there's no one else at these meetings other than maybe myself, someone who I come with, maybe the mayor. Former Mayor Kirkland attended this meeting. And after being introduced, after the mayor spoke, the solicitor, Frank Catania, introduced him, which is a little bit unusual when you get to public comment. But he was introduced by Solicitor Catania, and former Mayor Thaddeus Kirkland stated that when he was mayor, he had many conversations with former receiver Michael Dowry about the privatization of CWA. Didn't say a lot, only a couple of sentences. But if you were there, right, these comments taken in context of the meeting and taken in context of what the solicitor had said in his introduction of the former mayor, it appeared to suggest that Receiver Dowry supported privatization of CWA, which is absolutely not true. And many of you know, Receiver Dowry never supported privatization, despite what other folks said. And in fact, blocked then Mayor Kirkland from signing an agreement with Aqua to try to privatize the CWA. I apologize for having to go through this again with everybody, but like we got to knock down things. I've learned that you got to knock down things, when you hear them in order to make sure people understand. So let's go back in time a little bit. Not going to spend a lot of time over here, but I got the receipts, so I want to show them here. Let's talk about what actually happened, right? Back in February of 2020, prior to receivership, which occurred in April and May of 2020, the Chester City Council conducted a request for proposals, otherwise known as an RFP process, for the CWA. Again, former mayor, not this city council, former mayor, former city council. The city received 3 bids, one from Aqua, one from Pennsylvania American Water, and actually a $60.2 million bid from the CWA itself. Folks kind of forget that, but the CWA actually bid on that. As part of that RFP, then Mayor Thaddeus Kirkland and the city council selected Aqua, and they drafted what's called an asset purchase agreement. That's a contract to actually buy the system. Now, the city's recovery plan required written approval of the receiver prior to the city accepting any proposal for an RFP for the water system. So here's what actually happened. On September 20th of 2021, the city solicitor sent a letter to the receiver's attorney asking the receiver for permission to accept the city's request to sell to Aqua. And here we have on slide 18 that letter, September 20th, 2021. This is the city request to privatize CWA. This is from Ken Schuster, being directed by the then city council to reach out to John McLaughlin, who was the counsel for the receiver, requesting permission to enter into an agreement with Aqua to privatize the CWA. So on October 4th, very soon thereafter, within 2 weeks, the receiver sent a letter to the city solicitor denying the city's request for permission to accept the city's request to sell to Aqua, right? And here's the letter, right? We've shown this before. We'll show it again. October 4th, 2021, the receiver denies the city request to privatize the CWA. Not authorize the city to sign the APA with any potential suitor, I do not authorize the city to sign the APA with Aqua or any other suitor. Sincerely, Michael Dowry, Michael T. Dowry, receiver, City of Chester, right? That went back to the city solicitor via the receiver's attorney. So that didn't end it, right? What happened was 9 days later, the then Chester City Council, on October 13th, 2021, then unanimously passed a resolution requesting permission to sign the asset purchase agreement, right, to privatize the CWA. And it said the city has determined that it is in the best interest of the city to sell the system to Aqua on the terms set forth in Aqua's bid. It is in the intent of the City Council of the City of Chester to promptly enter into an asset purchase agreement with Aqua, Pennsylvania, upon receipt of the receiver's approval to do so, and the City Council of the City of Chester requests the receiver to expeditiously provide his approval for City Council to do so, requesting permission to sign the asset purchase agreement, right? This is, again, former mayor, former City Council, October 13th, 2021. Here's the resolution. Here's the signed resolution, right? This is resolution 166-2021, right? And all that information that I just put in here is in this resolution, and it was passed. And as you can see, the signature on that resolution, interestingly enough, was former Mayor Thaddeus Kirkland, right? Which would make sense, right? There's the signature, right? Again, asking the receiver for permission, which the receiver denied and never gave. So if we fast forward until now, right, because the receiver never gave permission to do that, the asset purchase agreement has never been signed. On March 25th, 2026, the current Chester City Council, the current mayor, current Chester City Council, unanimously passed a resolution repealing that resolution that I just read, which supported privatization and stated, quote, City Council wishes to formally go on the public record and clearly state its position that it is emphatically opposed to any sale of the assets of the Chester Water Authority to any private company or corporate utility who are largely beholden to their shareholders and not ratepayers and the residents of the city of Chester. Right? That's what this mayor and this city council did. And of course, I've got the receipts again, right? Here's the resolution, right? March 25th, 2026, passed this year, repealing and changing the position, essentially the formal position of the city of Chester to indicate that it was emphatically opposed to privatization of the Chester Water Authority, right? And again, we can look over here and see the signature, right? It passed council on 25th day of March, and Mayor Stefan Roots, who is on this MFRAC, signed it. Councilman Davis voted for it, who's also on this MFRAC, right? So this idea that somehow, again, that the receiver was in some way in support of privatization, and it's not true. It never has been true. And as I mentioned to the Chester Water Authority board at the public comment, every document that they've received in their voluminous right to know requests has confirmed that. There's no document out there that says the receiver is in support of privatization or implies that the receiver is in support of privatization, right? No matter how many thousands of documents and hundreds of hours that have been expended in getting those documents, there's no evidence of that because it doesn't exist. So again, to summarize in this situation, again, just because I want to put a nice bow on it, and I hope I don't have to do this again, but if I have to, at least I have the slides for it. The previous mayor and previous city council wanted to privatize the Chester Water Authority. The previous receiver refused to give them permission to privatize the Chester Water Authority. The current mayor and current city council emphatically oppose privatization, and the current receiver, i.e. me, does so as well. So want to end on just one other item here, a little bit of housekeeping, and this was a status of the receiver right to know request. So as some of you know, back on June 18th of this year, I made a right to know request to the CWA seeking financial documents and financial information. I was looking for engagement letters and I was looking for bills that would indicate how much were being spent on legal fees, because under the right to know request, under the right to know law, an entity can't you can't ask an entity to create a document. It would be nice if you just got a document that showed how much you spent in legal fees and presented it, right? Which is why I had to ask for all the bills and in order to determine CWA's spending on legal fees, right? My stuff is public, right? My contracts are public. My team's contracts are public. But again, we don't have any transparency, any insight into Chester Water Authority's situation. On July 27th of 2026, CWA responded indicating that the request would result in over 35,000 pages and that they would charge me $7,000 to obtain this information. So putting aside the fee part, which we can discuss in another MFRAC, given the size of the production, on August 5th, once I heard back, I withdrew this request. Right, I'm not going to put their staff through the same kind of stuff that they put our staff through. That's a lot. I'll find another way of getting that information. I don't. So but last Friday, as I mentioned earlier, I made the following right to know request to the CWA for two two pieces of information. One is a copy of that move forward resolution that was referenced in the solicitor's report um, at the August 20th, 2026 Chester Water Authority Board of Directors meeting, right? That was a resolution that the board passed preliminarily authorizing next steps to borrow again $100 million, right? That resolution appears nowhere in the public. So I think it's probably important that we get that. The second thing is I've asked for copies of those expense by function reports included in the board member packets for each CWA board meeting going back to January 1st, 2024 to the current date. That should not be very hard to put together. It's simply what the expense by function report is. It's all in the board packets. I can't imagine that being particularly burdensome to put together. So again, haven't yet received a response to these requests. I understand that, right? I made them on Friday. 5 days have not passed, so I get it. But I wanted to make everybody aware of kind of where that stood. And certainly, once we get more information on that or any update, I will be happy to provide it to the committee and to the public, unless the Water Authority would like to provide it to the public on their own, which would be great. But I don't expect that to happen. So with that, that is my update on the report. Mayor, did I accurately describe the meeting that you also attended? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Finding the mute button is always hard for me. I'm not going to sit here and judge whether you describe this accurately. I do have some comments though, and it relates, to all this with regard to the meeting. Yeah, there was a $100 million loan that was brought up there in the meeting. Kind of surprised us all because it just came so late in the game. But I will say that as I sat there and heard the explanation from the solicitor, and then they went to vote. At the time of the vote, the only person that really had any questions was our appointee from the city, Mr. Tom Moore. And I will say to Tom Moore's questions, which brought a lot more clarity to the impact and the purpose for this loan, Tom Moore was satisfied and voted yes, on this resolution that we haven't read yet. But it just speaks to the fact of the value he has on that board. No one else asked any questions. And I really believe as a result of his questions that were recorded and publicly, on public record, that anyone else who will see that and see those questions asked will know that, the value he brings to that board is the fact that he understands the finances very well with regard to the Chester Water Authority. So that was exciting for me to see because it just doesn't look right when an entity is going to borrow that much money. What's the effect it's going to have on rates? What's the effect it's going to have on debts? Once those questions were answered, it moved on. But I want to first, well, I already had a first, but I want to go back and thank the Water Department, the Chester Water Authority, for the work that they did for us at the mayor's office. This summer, we had our Safe Summer Series. There were pop-up carnivals in 12 neighborhoods, and it included a bouncy house that had a water slide, and it was the Chester Water Authority that helped us tap into the fire hydrants at each of those locations. So thank you guys. You were perfect. You always showed up on time. You always showed up when it was time to shut down. So thank you for this. One of the things that VJ did say in his remarks today is the fact that the city is not looking to privatize the Chester Water Authority. It's a public entity. We wanted to stay in public hands. But in the fact that it's public, you have to put up with public exposure and public scrutiny. And that's what VJ kind of brought today, just responding to things that the public should recognize. I've watched this fight go on, since the beginning, long before I got into government. And it really does look like a fight. And I'm telling you, in this administration, this fight is going to end. It is time for this fight to end. It's time for the city of Chester and the Chester Water Authority to sit down and come up with a solution. I don't see a solution coming out of the back and forth that's going on with each side. But I will say it's been a good fight. And the good part about the fight is that it's exposing, some of the things to us, for sure, on the city side, and to the public as to how the authority operates. What we can say is that it hasn't led to anything except some stupid big expenses. On behalf of rate increases, I would much rather us not continue to spend money on lawyers and start spending these millions in supporting Chester Water Authority to become the best publicly owned water authority in the country. I can't reiterate enough that this fight's going to end during this term. There's smart people on both sides. We should be sitting down, coming up with solutions. And, this may be a surprise to some, but Chester City government wants to save CWA too. I don't know why the narrative has been put out there that we're trying to destroy the Chester Water Authority. What do we gain by killing this authority? We need water. Delaware County needs water. Chester County needs water. I understand we're down in Delaware and other parts too. As a city official, as a public official, as the guy leading this city, I don't want CWA to fail. Like I don't want to see the Chester Housing Authority fail, or CETA fail, or Stormwater fail, planning and zoning fail. We don't want our authorities to fail. When authorities are created, it's basically the city saying, we're turning over our authority to an entity that's going to run this on our behalf. And our behalf is basically the ability and the authority to appoint board members. Board members are the neck that turns the head. But somehow in the city of Chester, so many of our boards aren't represented by at least one person on each board that's an expert in the core competency of the authority that they're representing. That's what I do. That's when I'm selecting a board member for any of the boards, that's what I'm looking for first. I want to make sure there's an expert sitting at the table. Does it mean everybody has to be an expert in water or stormwater or housing or whatever board they represent? Absolutely not. It takes a mix of talent and connections and money and legal knowledge and finance knowledge to make a great board. But because so many of our boards don't have that person with the core competency of the authority that they represent, that's what we do. Or that's what I'm seeking to do. And me and council don't always agree. They have 4 votes, I have 1. I've lost more times than not. But in the case of the Chester Water Authority, we've all agreed that Tom Moore is our guy. I will tell everybody in the sound of my voice right now, Chester Water Authority, you really woke up a sleeping giant in the way that you've treated our appointment. For the most part, we were just sitting back watching the receiver and you figure this stuff out. But once you said you're not going to seat our appointment, everybody started paying attention over here. And I'm talking about mayor and all council members. We're not happy. Then you have to spend money, go to court for a judge to say, of course, the man's going to sit on the board. And you don't stop there. You're filing again to get the guy kicked off the board for no reason other than some personal stuff and not professional stuff. We're not happy. As the receiver mentioned earlier, out of the Supreme Court case comes the statutory rights of how the authority is run and how they spend their money is now in the hands of Chester City Council, Delaware County Council, and the Chester County Board of Commissioners. I want you all to know that I have sent a letter to each member of each of those bodies to convene, to sit down and talk about a solution. What goes on between the receiver and Chester Water Authority may continue as it's going, but with the fact that we need to exercise our statutory rights, I'm leading that charge. I'm going to make sure we sit down and make sure we all get to the same point. And the point is, we've got to stop spending money on lawyers and start spending money on putting pipes in the ground. There's no reason why we shouldn't be sitting down and talking about solutions right now. The fight has gone on long enough. The fight isn't leading to anywhere. And now you got mayor and council mad. So let's figure this thing out. That's all I want to do. The ratepayers deserve more. For those people who are, claiming to think about the ratepayers first, you can't be thinking about the ratepayers when we're spending so much money on lawyers and not getting a bit closer to saving CWA and fighting for the city of Chester. It's not a one or the other. It should be both. Save CWA, fight for the city of Chester. That's what I'm fighting for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other members of the committee, either on this or on other matters?
Actually, yeah, Mr. Receiver.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to mention to thank the city of Chester. DCED had a delegation out last week, I think. I wasn't able to join, but I know some high-level officials from the department were shown hospitality at the city, taken around in a van, saw some projects, saw some sites, took a look at the extensive park system of the city, and just wanted to thank you for the hospitality. It's really great when we can get our feet on the ground in a place, and it's always good to be in Chester, and also to meet with the mayor and his team. And we look forward to continuing to collaborate in the future. But thank you for that.
Well, I'm going to say you're welcome. It was great having you guys come down. And enough time has passed since your first tour that it made for a special tour in a sense that we could take you around town and you begun to see some of the progress that hadn't even been started. We were only talking about it the first time through. So just driving down 291 and seeing, buildings under construction. And we had Lisa Gaffney with our Chester Economic Development Authority on the van. And she very cleverly pointed out where your money, where, RACP money or whatever monies that come from the state was invested. And she also sneakily pointed out places where we need more investment. But what was really special about it is that the tour, hit all areas of the town, the waterfront, the stadium area. We looked at new housing. We looked at the Silver Care site, which you guys are very familiar with. We went to the parks to show, potential, and we showed, some of the blight remediation that we're doing. We went over to Widener's campus. It was a full tour of the city of Chester. One of our council members, Councilman Green, joined the tour, and I hope he doesn't mind, but after the tour was over, we had a short chat, and he says, wow, I didn't know about all the things that were going on around the city, which led me to, in the very near future, we're going to put all the council members on the van and do that same tour so that we can all be on the same page to see, the progress that we're making. We work so hard on a day-to-day basis just doing things. Sometimes we just kind of don't take the time to kind of give ourselves a pat on the back for what's happening. So I can't thank you guys enough for working with us through this whole project. Receivership is one thing, but a partnership with DCED, brings so much value to the city of Chester, and you guys have been great to the city, and we look forward to a long relationship with you guys, even after receivership is over.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. The improvements have been noticeable, and the investments have been good ones. We look forward to continuing that.
Thank you, Mr. Chief. Councilman Davis?
Yes, again, good afternoon, everyone. That's actually a perfect segue into my little snippet here. I had the pleasure and opportunity to see our new public works facility building being built on 291, along with Mr. Andrew Heyman, who's the director of streets, and Mr. Mark Alexander, who's director of facilities. And it was really exciting experience to see like how that building is coming along. I'm happy that it's going to be finished in November. And I really just want to talk about the opportunity for me to see the hard work that's going into that building and the morale that I see that it's going to bring the gentleman who's going to be working out of that building. They're really excited to be there. They're really excited to come to work and, actually get the work done for the city of Chester because they have a building, a facility that they can utilize that's up to par with, the standard that we're trying to uphold in the city of Chester. So I want to thank you, Mr. Kapoor and Mr. Dowry and Mr. Mayor and the rest of my colleagues on council for making this project happen. It's going to be a game changer for us, and I'm really excited to be a part of that. So I just want to give everybody a thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilman Davis. And there's a lot of work that's gone into this. It's the chief of staff, Thomas Moore, the same Thomas Moore, meets every 2 weeks, and gets an update on this, and very good project management. And I believe, if we've said it correctly, I believe this is the largest municipally funded project in capital project in Chester's history. So it is exciting to see all that going up. So. Councilman, thank you for that, and again, thank you for all the staff as well. So, anything else for the good of this meeting? All right. Well, we thank you all, members of the public, members of the committee, for joining us again. We will be back the second Tuesday in September. I hope everybody has a great end of the summer, and we will see everybody then. Thank you.